Well, hi everyone, it's Jeff Hopper with Jeff Cranford, and we are here in our studio in La Quinta, California, where it's nice and sunny outside, and we're hoping it's that way for you as spring is starting to come to you. We are doing a brand new series on 6 of the articles in this year's Links Players magazine.
And I will say this, great magazine this year. Congrats, Jeff. So I know you put a lot of hard work, and that is 100% this guy, plus the people who contribute. So great magazine this year.
Well, we're going to talk about some of those people who contribute. And one of them is a guy who has been waiting all year for this week. Because Wesley Bryan won at Harbortown last year, which got him into the Masters.
Yeah, huge.
All the way in 2018. He had to wait almost a full year to play the Masters, which is this week.
Do you think he spent any time thinking about that?
Yeah, I think so. Well, Wesley has a great story because he went from obscurity to success very quickly.
Yeah.
He and his brother made these videos that went viral with trick shots. That shot him up. Then he made it onto the web.com tour. 3 wins.
Yeah, just incredible.
Straight to the tour.
Battlefield promotion is what they call it.
Yep. And then he won last year on tour.
Yeah.
I like an author who's a pastor in British Columbia. His name is Mark Buchanan.
Yeah.
And he said, for all the years he's been pastoring, he's had lots of people come to him broke, troubled, saying, "What do I do?" And he never had anyone in his congregation say, "Hey, Pastor Mark, I've had a nice windfall. What should I do?"
Yeah, interesting.
Is there anything in Scripture that tells us what we should do when great blessing comes our way?
Yeah, and as you and I were discussing a little bit earlier, it immediately harks back to Deuteronomy chapter 8. And listen to what God says, starting here in verse 10. It says, when you've eaten and are satisfied, talking about when they enter this promised land, and you shall bless the Lord your God with the good land which he has given you, beware.
This is Moses.
Beware, yes.
Telling the
Moses.
people,
correct.
This is about to happen to you.
Exactly. He says, beware lest you forget the Lord your God by not keeping his commandments, his ordinances, and his statutes, which I am commanding you today, lest when you have eaten and are satisfied, you've built good houses and lived in them, and when your herds and your flocks multiply, 401k read, your silver and gold multiply, maybe cryptocurrency, who knows, and all that multiplies, then your heart becomes proud. You forget the Lord who brought you out of the land of Egypt and out of the house of slavery. He led you through great, terrible wilderness and its fiery serpents, scorpions, and thirsty ground where you had no water, but he brought water for you out of the rock. So I think what God's saying is it's prosperity it's typically the greatest challenge. I mean, in ministry now over 2 decades, Jeff, I look back similarly to Mark Buchanan, and I think about all the people that have come to Christ and how many hundreds of people we've baptized, and it's very few that have come out of great success where everything's multiplied. It's something that's hit them, a tragedy, cancer diagnosis, losing someone close to them. It's really unbelievable, but like you said, rarely do I find somebody that's just won the lottery and the first thing that they want to do is to go find a good church and be crucified. You know, I've been crucified with Christ. It's no longer I who live. They want to live. They want their life because they think that they're going to find life. And I think that's Paul's admonition also to Timothy in 1 Timothy chapter 6. He said, you take those who are wealthy in this life and you instruct them to be generous, to be ready to share, storing up for themselves a good treasure in heaven that's secure for them. Now, what he's saying is we have to be very cautious. And idolatry has always been the faithless act of Israel, but it's the faithless act where something grabs our heart, our attention, our focus, and pulls us away from the simplicity and the devotion of following Jesus. And good times do that. Good times tend to do that. So I look back just, I think, in my own life, and I think I finally understand James. Count it as joy when you encounter various trials. I look back and I go, Lord, it's the trials that brought me nearer you, and if the ultimate goal of me being on earth is to be conformed to your image.
Yeah.
If that's the ultimate goal, that's why the health, wealth, and prosperity gospel as a gospel falls so short, because if you think that God's here just to bless you, God's here to conform you to the image of His Son.
Yes, He is.
And whatever that takes, whatever
Right.
it takes.
I'm pained by thinking on Solomon right now.
Yeah.
That here was a man
Everything.
richly blessed beyond anything. I mean, we could put all our wealth together, everyone watching this video, we wouldn't have what Solomon had.
No.
And it just went
Yeah.
for him.
It's a trial. The greatest trial you'll ever have is success and prosperity. It's the greatest trial you'll ever have.
What do I do to protect my heart?
It's a great question. Well, as we go back to Paul's letter to Timothy, teach them, instruct them to be generous. Now, that's not just generous with your money, because we're not just talking about money here in this article. We're talking about just fame, success, anything. Be generous with your time. Be generous with your gifting. Be generous. Seek Him as a top priority. And yeah, there is no other antidote. And obviously, then I would also say community. Your own Links Fellowship is a huge way in which you can walk closely with the Lord as you begin to back off. And at least, we talked about this, and I'll close with this. In this last week on Thursday, we had a fellowship group, a meeting at a club. And I said, isn't it great? We had about 50 guys in a room. Isn't it great that we can come together and we can lift up and say, we aspire to this? And it was humility, it was contrition, it was a sacrificial life. Isn't it great to meet once a week in your Links group and at least aspire to, knowing that we'll go back into the workaday world and then those idols will want to creep in, at least we're part of a community who aspires to become like Jesus. I think that's the greatest thing you can do.
Yes. Well, glad to be with you. We'll be back next week with a little more conversation from this year's magazine.